ever realized you were dreaming while the dream was still happening? It's a strange and fascinating moment. 1 second you're completely immersed in a dream, and then something shifts. You suddenly recognize, I'm dreaming. And from that moment, the entire experience changes. If you're new to this topic, I recommend listening to the previous episodes as well, because they build the foundation for understanding these different states of awareness. You don't want to miss the earlier episodes where we explore the process, the transition states, and what happens as awareness begins to shift. And stay with me until the end of this episode, because I'll also be talking about how a lucid dream can become a doorway into an out-of-body experience. Hi, welcome back to the Astral Gateway podcast. I'm Narate Weiss Daviciani. In the last episode, I answered questions from members of the Astral Gateway community about astral projection, sleep paralysis, and some of the experiences people encounter along the way. Today we're going to explore lucid dreaming. What is it, how it happens, and why it's such an interesting state of awareness to explore. Lucid dreaming is the moment when you become aware that you're dreaming while the dream is still happening. The dream doesn't stop. You're still inside it. But a new level of awareness appears, and suddenly you can interact with the experience in a completely different way. So let's begin by understanding what lucid dreaming really is and how you can start recognizing these moments when they happen. One of the most interesting things about lucid dreaming is that it shows us something important about awareness. Normally, when we dream, we accept the dream as reality. We don't question the strange places we find ourselves in, the people who appear, or the things that happen around us. But in a lucid dream, something changes. Part of you becomes aware enough to step back and recognize this is a dream. And that small shift can completely transform the experience. Instead of just watching the dream unfold, you can begin interacting with it. You can explore, ask questions, change your focus, and observe how quickly the dream responds to your thoughts and intentions. This is one of the reasons lucid dreaming is so fascinating. It gives us a direct experience of how powerful the mind is when imagination, awareness, and intention come together. But before we talk about how to become lucid, it's important to understand what is actually happening when we dream. Dreams are not just random images appearing in the mind. They are created through a complex process involving memory, emotions, experiences, and the subconscious. During normal dreaming, the mind creates a complete reality around you. You can see places, hear sounds, feel emotions, and experience events as if they're actually happening. The difference in lucid dreaming is that awareness enters the experience. You're still dreaming, but now you have the ability to observe the dream instead of being completely absorbed by it. And for many people, that first moment of realizing they're dreaming is unforgettable. It can happen in different ways. Sometimes it's because something in the dream doesn't make sense. Maybe you see something impossible, or you notice that the environment feels unusual. Other times, there's no obvious trigger. It's simply a moment where awareness appears, almost like waking up inside a dream. This is why dream awareness is such an interesting skill to develop. You're not creating the dream, you're learning to become conscious within something that is already happening. One of the simplest ways to start developing lucid dreaming is through reality checks. The idea is very simple. Throughout your day, stop for a moment and ask yourself, am I dreaming? It sounds like a strange question to ask when you're awake, but the purpose is to train your awareness. Most of the time, we move through life automatically. We assume we're awake because everything feels normal, but the same thing happens in dreams. We usually accept whatever is happening without questioning it. By practicing this during the day, you create a habit of awareness that can eventually carry over into your dreams. When you ask yourself, am I dreaming? Don't just repeat the words. Take a moment to really look around and question your experience. Where am I? How did I get here? What was I doing a few minutes ago? Does everything around me make sense? Sometimes in a dream, something won't quite add up. Maybe a place feels familiar but slightly different. Maybe something impossible happens, or maybe you simply get that feeling that something is not quite right. That moment of questioning can become the moment you realize, I'm dreaming. And that's when the dream changes from something you're experiencing to something you're aware within. Another important part of developing lucid dreams is learning to remember your dreams. Because if you wake up and forget your dreams within a few minutes, it becomes much harder to recognize patterns or notice when you're dreaming. This is where a dream journal can be incredibly helpful. You don't need to write pages and pages. Even a few words when you wake up can make a difference. Write down anything you remember, a place, a person, an emotion, a strange detail, or something that stood out. Over time, you begin to notice your own dream language. You may start seeing the same locations, the same themes, or certain situations that appear again and again. These recurrent elements can become signs that you're dreaming. For example, maybe you often find yourself in a place that doesn't exist in your waking life, or you repeatedly meet certain people in your dreams. Eventually, recognizing those patterns can trigger the thought, wait, this is familiar, I've been here before, and that recognition can be the doorway into lucidity. Another thing that can help is setting an intention before sleep. Before you go to bed, take a moment to tell yourself, tonight I will recognize when I'm dreaming. You can repeat it a few times, visualize yourself becoming aware in a dream, and allow that intention to stay with you as you fall asleep. The key is not forcing it. Lucid dreaming is not about fighting your way into a dream. It's about creating the right conditions for awareness to appear. The more familiar you become with your own dreams, the easier it becomes to notice when something is different. And once that awareness appears, the next question many people have is, what can I actually do in a lucid dream? This is where lucid dreaming becomes really fascinating. Because once you know you're dreaming, the experience can open in many different ways. One of the first things that people want to know when they become lucid is, can I control my dreams? And the answer is sometimes, but I think it's important to understand the difference between lucidity and control. Lucidity simply means you know you're dreaming. That's the first step. Control is something else. Some people are able to change the environment, fly, create different experiences, or interact with the dream in very intentional ways. Others may simply observe the dream with a new level of awareness. And that's completely normal. In the beginning, many people try to control everything immediately. They become excited, they try to force the dream to change, and sometimes that excitement wakes them up. The more natural approach is to first become comfortable being aware inside the dream. Explore, notice the details, interact with the dream instead of trying to dominate it. Many people are surprised by how responsive the dream world can be. Your expectations, emotions, and focus can have a strong influence on what unfolds. If you believe something will happen, the dream often responds to that belief. This is why intention is such an important part of lucid dreaming. Before trying to do something complicated, it can be helpful to start with simple things. Look around, touch objects, pay attention to the environment, ask questions, see how the dream responds. Lucid dreaming can become a way of exploring the mind, creativity, emotions, and the deeper parts of ourselves. Some people use lucid dreaming for creativity. Artists, writers, and musicians have described receiving ideas from their dreams. Others use them for personal exploration, facing fears, or understanding themselves on a deeper level. Another interesting aspect of lucid dreaming is that the dream itself can sometimes feel incredibly real. People often describe the colors as being more vivid, the sensations as more intense, and the emotions as stronger than in ordinary dreams. You might notice details you would normally overlook: the texture of objects, the feeling of the environment around you, or even the way light appears in the dream. This is one reason why lucid dreams can leave such a lasting impression after you wake up. They don't always feel like a random collection of images, they can feel like a complete experience. At the same time, lucid dreams don't always last as long as we want them to. One of the most common experiences for beginners is becoming aware that they're dreaming and then waking up shortly afterward. This often happens because of excitement. The moment you realize, I'm finally lucid, your awareness can become too active and the dream begins to fade. Learning to stay calm is one of the biggest skills in lucid dreaming. Instead of getting caught up in the excitement, try to ground yourself in the dream. Look around, focus on the details, engage with the environment. Some people even use simple actions like touching objects, rubbing their hands together, or focusing on their senses to help maintain the dream. Over time, you start becoming more comfortable with the experience. You're no longer just surprised by the fact that you're dreaming. You begin to understand how to move within that space. And this is where lucid dreaming becomes more than just an interesting experience. It becomes a practice of awareness. You begin to recognize that consciousness can take different forms and that the mind is capable of creating experiences far beyond what we normally notice during our waking life. So, to recap, developing lucid dreaming comes down to a few key things: remembering your dreams, becoming familiar with your own dream patterns, practicing awareness during the day, and setting the intention to recognize when you're dreaming. One technique that brings these elements together is called mild technique, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. The idea behind mild is simple. You're training your mind to recognize the dream state when it happens. Before falling asleep, or if you wake up during the night, you can repeat an intention such as, next time I'm dreaming, I will recognize that I'm dreaming. But the important part isn't just repeating the words, it's connecting with the experience you're trying to create. Imagine yourself inside a dream and reaching that moment of realization, I'm dreaming. Feel what it would be like to become aware while the dream is still unfolding. Another way to practice mild is by using a dream you just had. If you wake up during the night and remember a dream, bring that dream back into your mind. Replay it and imagine yourself returning to that dream, but this time becoming aware that you're dreaming. Picture yourself noticing the dream signs, recognizing the moment, and becoming lucid. This practice helps your mind become more familiar with that transition from ordinary dreaming to lucid awareness. Like any skill, it develops with practice. The more you pay attention to your dreams, the easier it becomes to recognize your own patterns and notice when you're dreaming. Another technique people use for lucid dreaming is the wake back to bed technique. This method works by using the natural rhythm of sleep. During the later part of the night, we usually spend more time in REM sleep, which is the stage where vivid dreaming occurs. The idea is to wake up after several hours of sleep, stay awake for a short period of time, and then return to sleep with the intention of becoming lucid. During that waking period, you can think about lucid dreaming, read about it, review your intention, or simply bring your awareness back to the idea of recognizing your dreams. Then, when you return to sleep, you're going back in with a stronger focus and a higher chance of maintaining awareness during the dream. Some people combine wake back to bed with mild because they work well together. You wake up, remember your intention, visualize becoming lucid, and then allow yourself to fall back asleep. Another approach is simply learning to notice your dreams naturally. Throughout the day, pay attention to moments that feel unusual. Notice details. Question your surroundings. Become more aware of your experience. The more you practice awareness while awake, the more likely it is that this awareness will appear during sleep. And remember, everyone's experience with lucid dreaming is different. Some people have spontaneous lucid dreaming without trying, while others build the ability slowly through practice. The important thing is to stay curious and enjoy the process of discovering your own dream world. One thing that often happens when people start exploring lucid dreaming is that they expect it to work in a very specific way. They might think that once they become lucid, they'll immediately be able to control everything, fly anywhere, or have a perfectly clear and stable experience. But in reality, lucid dreams can vary a lot. Sometimes they're incredibly vivid and stable. Other times they may feel brief or unclear, especially in the beginning. One of the biggest challenges is staying calm once you realize you're dreaming. That moment of recognition can bring a lot of excitement, and that excitement can sometimes pull you out of the dream. If that happens, it doesn't mean you fail. It's simply part of learning how to stay present within the experience. Another thing people often experience is that their awareness comes and goes. They may realize they're dreaming, lose that awareness, and then become lucid again later. That is completely normal. Lucid dreaming is a skill of awareness, and like any skill, it develops through experience. The more familiar you become with the dream state, the easier it becomes to recognize it and remain within it. Now, I want to talk about something that many people who explore lucid dreaming eventually become curious about. Because once you become aware inside a dream, a question naturally starts to come up. Is this only a dream, or can this state become something more? In my own experience, lucid dreaming can become a bridge into out of body experiences. The two states share certain similarities, but there is also a noticeable shift when the experience moves beyond the dream environment. So, how does that transition happen? What changes and what can you do when you find yourself lucid in a dream and want to explore further? Let's look at how lucid dreaming can open a doorway to an out of body experience. When you become lucid in a dream, you already have awareness while the physical body is asleep. Instead of continuing to focus on the dream scene, the places, people, and events around you, you can begin shifting your attention toward the state of awareness itself. This is where intention becomes important. You can hold the intention to move beyond the dream, allowing the dream environment to fade and your awareness to shift into a different state. Sometimes the dreams start to dissolve, the images may disappear, the experience may become quieter, or you may notice sensations that feel different from a normal dream. Another approach is to use a direct command while lucid. Say something like, I am moving out of body now. For some people, that clear intention is enough to create a shift. The dream can change, and the experience can move from being inside a dream world to a state that feels separate from it. The key moment is recognizing that transition and staying with it instead of immediately getting pulled back into the dream or waking awareness. The focus changes from what is happening in this dream to where is my awareness moving now. This is what makes lucid dreaming such an interesting doorway into out-of-body experiences. You are already conscious while the body is asleep. And from that point, you can explore what happens when awareness moves beyond the usual dream experience. One thing I want to mention is that this transition can feel different for everyone. Some people may experience a very clear separation, while for others, it may feel more like a gradual shift where the dream fades and a new environment or state of awareness emerges. There may be sensations along the way, changes in perception, movement, vibrations, sounds, or a feeling that something is changing, but the experience itself is not always the same every time. This is why I encourage people not to become too attached to one specific sign or sensation. The important part is the awareness that remains present throughout the process. Sometimes the transition is smooth and effortless. Other times you may find yourself returning to the dream, waking up, or losing awareness before the shift fully happens. That's all part of learning how these states work for you. For me, one of the most fascinating things about lucid dreaming is that it gives us another way to explore the relationship between sleep, awareness, and consciousness. It shows us that the mind is capable of experiences far beyond our usual waking perspective. And whether someone approaches these experiences from a psychological perspective, a spiritual perspective, or simply from curiosity, there is a lot we can learn by paying attention to what happens when we become aware in these deeper states. As we come to the end of this episode, I want to leave you with one thought. Lucid dreaming is not only about having interesting experiences while we sleep. It's also about becoming more aware of our minds, our thoughts, and the different states of awareness we move through. Every night we enter the dream world. Most of the time we experience it without questioning it, but lucid dreaming gives us the opportunity to become aware within the experience and explore it from a completely different perspective. Whether you're interested in lucid dreaming for creativity, self-exploration, or exploring consciousness itself, the first step is simply becoming more familiar with your own dream world. Pay attention to your dreams, write them down, stay curious. You may be surprised by what you discover. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss future episodes where we continue exploring astral projection, lucid dreaming, and the different states of awareness. And if you're not already part of the Astral Gateway Facebook community, I'd love to have you there. It's not just a place where I post content, it's a community where you can post too and ask questions, share your experiences, start discussions, or connect with others on a similar path. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future podcast episode, let me know in the group. Your questions and ideas help shape the conversations we have, and I'd love to hear what you're curious about. And of course, you're welcome to leave your questions here in the comments below. And I will leave all the important links in the episode description. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay present, stay aware, and I will see you in the next episode.